There we go. All right. So now we are recording. So anyways, welcome to everyone. Those who have never joined us on a program, we give mostly monthly programs throughout the year. They used to be in person during COVID, and during COVID, we switched to be on Zoom. And we're looking forward to looking into possibilities and presenting these starting in the fall in person again. But we'll cross that bridge throughout the summer. This month is Fred Delcomyn about his trip down into Antarctica and the southern South America and all of his pictures from that adventure. We have a picture of a chinstrap penguin as we've been posting around on our newsletter or on Facebook, and that's a great picture. I'm looking forward to seeing more pictures as that's one of my bucket list items to go there someday. So I'm excited to see his pictures. In April's program are Kindy grants, and just a little reminder for anyone who is a grad student or knows any grad students working in the field of ornithology, those are due on March 25th for this year's recipients. 3 awardees will be granted $2,000, and those who are working in the field of ornithology, and those are to be sent to our Vice President Roger Diggs by March 25th. And more information can be found either via our newsletter for last month or upcoming information that we'll be posting here in the next few days. Also, our Sunday morning bird walks will be starting here actually as of this Sunday, and I'll be leading most of them. So either look for my face or maybe Zach Sutton or someone else that might be leading a couple others, but for the most part, I'll be leading them. So I'll be looking forward to meeting you guys or anyone else at those starting this Sunday and every Sunday between now and end of May at 7:30 in the morning from the Anita Purvis Nature Center parking lot. We have no upcoming field trips for March, but we're getting possibly some field trips basically to come up in April or May or the summer. So look forward to maybe the April newsletter or the April program for more details on those. But anyways, I will give it off to Fred tonight. And as I said before, leave either questions to the end or text your or type your questions in the chat and I'll bring them up at the end. And I will give it off for Fred. And also, I think you should be able to share your screen. So let me know if you can't, but you should be able to now. So anyways, thank you, Fred, for this. And let's get started.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's see, here we go. Right. So it's just as well this is via Zoom because I actually have a cold now. So I can give the presentation, but I'm glad I'm not able to infect any of you. So if you hear me coughing or sneezing or something like that, don't be alarmed. Viruses can't go over the internet, so that's a good thing. So about a year ago, there I go. Not quite a little more than a year ago, my son Michael and I took a trip to Southern Chile and Antarctica. Antarctica had been on my bucket list for a while. Since I'd been to Australia, I figured Antarctica was another continent I hadn't visited, and with that, I only had one to go, which was Africa, believe it or not. So this was a chance to cross that off my list, and it was well worth it. We did decide to spend some time in Southern Chile first, just so that we were sure not to miss the starting time of the cruise, and that was worthwhile as well. So that's a view from Southern Chile. You will see that again later. We went from...
Real quick, Fred, for some reason it's just stuck on like your files folder, so I'm not sure what's going on.
Okay, well, it says I'm screen sharing.
Yeah, it shows your screen, but for some reason it just shows, at least on my end, it shows just your file folder and just shows your presentation as a file versus your actual. It's like on the side. Not sure what's.
Okay, let me try this. What are you seeing now?
I'm still just maybe it's just my end. is anyone else seeing what I'm seeing? I'm just seeing his vitals folder and then like his and Fred's presentation is on the side.
Yeah, that's what I'm seeing too.
Yep.
Yeah, same here.
I'm not
All
sure.
right.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I've never seen that before. Hold on. I'm sure it's nothing on my end here.
Fred, when you start sharing, you have to select the program that you want to share or the window you want to share. So it might be, I don't-
Yeah, I did, but then I had to start the presentation. So let me okay.
I think you may want to just stop sharing and then restart sharing and select the PowerPoint on that screen.
Yeah, it wasn't a PowerPoint, it was a standalone presentation, but let me try that.
We'll get it worked in. We'll get it worked in.
Okay, let me try the screen sharing this. And all right, I got,
Perfect.
yeah, but now let me see if I can get the
Presentation mode.
yeah.
What is that under? I forget. Maybe under view, maybe?
I'm not.
Or slideshow.
Or slideshow. Yeah, it'd be under slideshow, I think.
Oh, here we go. Okay. Normal reading view.
Right in the middle, there's a slideshow menu.
Yeah, I think maybe it'd be under slideshow. Sorry, I did say view. I'd figured it'd be under that. From the beginning, yeah. Perfect. Thank you so much.
Need to fly or not to fly?
Yes, it's perfect, or at least on my end.
Okay, and did that advance? What do you see now?
I just see the adventure begins.
There's a beautiful
Okay,
picture.
great.
Looking
It's
at
a beautiful,
the
yes,
All right, that's what you're supposed to see.
perfect. It's working. Thank you.
So we went from Springfield, which is where Michael lives, to Dallas, to Santiago, Punta Arenas, and Camp Patagonia, and I'll show you where those are in just a minute. So there was a lot of time waiting in airports. There was a lot of time for COVID testing. We had to have a COVID test before we could even start. We had to have a negative COVID test within 3 days of departure. Once we got to Chile, we had to have another COVID test. There I am in front of a sign that says preferential attention. It's the only time in my life that I've ever been glad to be counted among the old and infirm. Somebody saw us in line and I guess she thought I was old and infirm. So we saved maybe 15 minutes or something like that. But anyway, it worked. A lot of time waiting in hotels. I got my COVID test back within a couple of hours. Michael didn't. And so we were supposed to stay in our hotel room, which we did. That's Michael eating his dinner. And eventually we got into Chile proper. Here's a map. Let's see, can you see that? I guess my pointer is not working on this. All right, Santiago is right about in the middle. And Punta Arenas is right down near the bottom. You can see it there. That was our destination. And then from Punta Arenas, we had to be driven up. Punta Arenas is way down at the lower right-hand corner. We had to be driven up to Patagonia camp. It was about a 4-hour drive, so it wasn't trivial. But the Torre del Paine National Park is what we were aiming for. Patagonia camp is just outside of the park, and well situated for tours in the park. That's what it looked like. We were in yurts. these standalone little housing units. They were accessible by stairways and quite comfortable inside. And from there, we could take a number of trips to Torre del Paine National Park. That gives you an overview of what the park looks like. There were really three components to the park. Mountains, water, and plains. So that shows all three. It shows the flat area, the mountains in the background, and Lake Toro in the front, which is a major lake in the area. And that's the Serrano River. And the Horns of Paine Mountains in the background. You'll see more pictures of those as we go along. So you can see what the terrain is like. We had a number of excursions out from Camp Patagonia every day. And they gave us a beautiful view of the scenery. This is a close-up of some of the mountains, the Horns of Paine Mountains. The main horn is on the left, and the one immediately to its right is the North Horn. You notice there's a discoloration. The lower part is light in color, and the top is dark, almost black. And that is due to the results of geological events in eons gone past. The light-colored granite is overlain by dark sedimentary rock, and then the whole thing has been eroded tremendously by glaciers over eons, many millions of years, to give the mountains that are so characteristic of this region. More view of the mountains. Now you notice down at the bottom there that there's this kind of a mist. That mist isn't just a morning mist. It is due to the whitecaps from the waves formed in Lake Toro by the wind. The wind was absolutely ubiquitous in this part of Chile. It was sometimes so strong we had trouble standing upright, and this is just one manifestation of that. So here we are hiking. There were lots of places we went. One of the places we went was an old outcropping. You can see it at the upper right there. This was a settlement from prehistoric times. The reason we went up there was to see these wall paintings, if you will. You see the hand on the right-hand side, two animals, and maybe another animal to the left. So these were quite interesting, done by indigenous people, so 10 to 12,000 years ago. Now, I did photograph birds, and of course, that's what most of you are here to hear about. This is a rufous collared sparrow. I had to look up the name. Rufous collared sparrow. I had a lot of trouble identifying this. You can find birds of Chile online and get pretty good identification easily. But this is a juvenile, and the rufous collared doesn't show up in the juvenile. So it took me a while to find a website that showed a picture of the juvenile that allowed me to identify it. So I take pictures even of fairly ordinary birds, and every once in a while I get something that's worth the feeling that I'm just taking mundane shots. Here I've got one in mid-hop. I've taken lots of pictures of sparrows and other birds over the years. I've never had one in mid-hop before, so I really like this one. This is not the only bird that I saw, obviously. Here is a spectacled tyrant flycatcher, endemic to lots of places in the world, including Australia, New Zealand, and of course, South America here. Then we have this Alpamado falcon. It's a relative of the American kite, and you can see it looks very similar too. It was very nice that we stopped the van and we were even able to get out of the van before it flew away. So I got a nice picture of it just sitting there looking us over. This is a somewhat larger bird. crested caracara, which is a carrion eater. It's a big bird. It's more than a foot from head to tail, so it's not small at all. So we saw birds in open plains like these. We saw birds on water, like this Chiloe widgeon and flying steamer duck. I love common names of birds. Sometimes they are just so quirky. I have no idea why this is called a flying steamer duck, but that is its official common name. And of course, we saw birds in wooded areas too. There was a place not far from Camp Patagonia where there was this nice waterfall in the woods. And we kept hearing these bird sounds. I assumed they were bird sounds, and I could not see what it was that was making the sounds until finally I spotted this fellow. It is a fellow, it's a male Magellanic woodpecker. Once I saw it, I don't know how I could have missed it because they're really pretty big, about 8 to 12 inches from their question. That's the female. He looks quite different, so they're easy to distinguish one from the other.
Well, somehow related to a pileated, it looks just like it, but different colors.
I think someone might be unmuted, or unless there's a question. If not, I guess Fred, go ahead. Sorry about that.
Okay, no problem. Now some that I saw down there were expected, like this Andean condor. These are huge birds. This telephoto shot is blown up from that, so I wasn't anywhere near this bird. They have an 8 to 10 foot wingspan. They're just enormous. And there were several of them. What I didn't expect to see was a whole congregation of them. And our guide told us that when they find carrion, like a dead guanaco, we'll see one in a little bit here, they gorge themselves on it. They eat so much that until they've digested some, they can't actually fly, which seems to me to be evolutionarily not a very good strategy, but it seems to work for them. So they're very nice, but they were expected. I knew about Andean condors, and I expected to see them down there. There are a group of them on the ground, as you can see. What I did not expect to see down in southern Chile was this Chilean flamingo. It's a different species than the one we see up here in Florida, but it's still obviously a flamingo. And I thought there's no way I could be seeing a flamingo, but there it was. The other bird that I saw that if I'd done research, I could have found out about sooner, but didn't, was this lesser rhea, these two lesser rheas, and there were more than one. Again, there's a telephoto shot. We were quite a distance away from them. They're also called Darwin's rhea, and they are flightless birds that thrive on the open plains in the park and in the surrounding area.
I wanted to say I'm at a Zoom meeting from 7 to 8, but I'm fine, but I'm going to miss seeing you.
Okay, all right. I haven't seen you today.
I know it.
Just hold on.
See you tomorrow.
Bye-bye.
Bye now.
All right, you should be good to go, Fred. I put everyone on mute for right now, so I'm sorry about that. We should be good
No,
now.
that's okay.
Okay. Anyways, go ahead.
So birds are not the only things that I saw down there. These are guanacos. They were ubiquitous. They're easy to see, and they're fairly tame, as you can see here. This one just took a liking or was curious about our hiking group, just casually walked in front of us. The guanacos are fairly approachable in the park because they're not hunted by people. One of our tour guides when seeing a group of guanacos, some young and the adults said, "Oh, there they are, guanacos. We give them names, breakfast, lunch, and barbecue." So they do get hunted by people. Apparently, they're good eating. In the open plains, their predator is a cougar. We did not see a cougar, but the guanacos stick to the open plains so they can see potential predators coming from some distance away. The guanacos are related to llamas and alpacas, as you can see if you're familiar with those animals. You can see what the resemblance is here. Again, they're fairly tame. This was on the other side of a fence, but it just stood there checking us out. Then we left Camp Patagonia and went to Antarctica. Most trips to Antarctica, there's the continent, which, by the way, comparison to the US, it's about 5.5 million square miles. The contiguous US states are only 3.1 million square miles. So it's bigger than the 48 states, no question. We were in Chile, so you can see that it's fairly close to the Antarctic Peninsula, that little finger sticking up there on the left. Most trips to Antarctica start from Ushuaia, which is in Argentina. You board the tour boat there, and then you have to cross the Drake Passage, which is the area between South America and Antarctica. The Drake Passage is reputed to be the roughest stretch of water in the world. I was not looking forward to that. Michael is prone to seasickness, besides which we had a time constraint. So in doing research, I found out that it's possible to fly. So we can fly from Bush Arenas to the South Shetland Islands, which is where that line terminates. And there we picked up our cruise ship. So there was our flight plane. So it's not small. The landing spot is a gravel runway. There's no concrete down there. Probably wouldn't last long in the Antarctic winter. But we got down there okay. Then we had to walk about 1 kilometer to get to the shore and then be ferried out to our ship, the Magellan Explorer, which you can see in the background there. There are people at the bottom there. You can see people getting off from the Zodiac boats onto the ship itself. So this is a blown up map of the Antarctic Peninsula, which shows the relationship between the South Shetland Islands, which are at the very top, and the Antarctic Peninsula itself, which is part of the Antarctic mainland. So we got the best of both possible worlds. We got some of the islands in the South Shetlands, which are much more populated with wildlife, but we also got to set foot on the continent itself. And of course, the first thing we saw was, excuse me, icebergs. Lots and lots of icebergs. Unfortunately, the weather wasn't particularly good the first few days we were down there. So it's very overcast. But even with overcast weather, you can see that the icebergs are quite spectacular. I mean, that one in the background in this just off center to the right is about as big as our ship. So they get to be pretty large. The icebergs have sometimes grooves on them, as you can see in this one, and those grooves are from the water level that the iceberg had at various times. Icebergs are, as you may have heard, 1/7, I think, is above water, and the rest is underwater. Well, when they're underwater, they melt, but they don't melt uniformly, and the part that's exposed to the atmosphere melts too sometimes, and it doesn't melt uniformly, and so as the iceberg melts, its center of gravity changes and then it shifts, it rolls in the ocean. So if you're ever on a cruise ship or a small boat and they take you out near an iceberg, you'll notice that they don't get very close. And that's because there's always the unpredictable danger of the iceberg rolling, which can obviously be very dangerous. But in addition to just these interesting former water level marks, icebergs can form bizarre shapes. There's no other word for it, just bizarre. This is one we saw. Here's another one. It looks a little bit like a spaceship taking off, and you can see our zodiac there for scale. And sometimes the icebergs even seem to have their own weather. As shown by this a little bit of a cloud over one. Antarctica, especially up in the Antarctic Peninsula, is very mountainous, and the mountains extend down into the sea. There is no beach, as you can see. If you extrapolate the line of that mountain on the left down into the water, it will go to enormous depths very quickly. So there's no shallow part. But the mountains themselves are very spectacular, as I think you can agree here. Off the mountains, you have glaciers, and the glaciers calve off, as the term goes, icebergs. That's what forms the icebergs. Here's another shot of one. This is pretty huge. The lines you can see at the top of the glacier are just lines formed by snowfall at different over the course of several years. Sometimes you have a lot of snowfall, sometimes you have only a little bit, and so the lines are of different extents, different colors, and you can see the snowfall pretty easily. Now, you may have heard of ice flows. Ice flows are different than icebergs. Icebergs come from a glacier that calves off into the sea. An ice flow is a frozen sheet of ice that breaks off. So it's, excuse me, it's frozen seawater actually that breaks off and then floats. So these do not have 7 or 6/7 underwater. They have much less than that. And there were quite a number of different ice flows that we saw. Yep. And then we saw wildlife too. One of our first days, we couldn't land where we wanted to land, and so they took us out in the zodiacs because what we saw were humpback whales feeding. You can see the characteristic shape of the back, a little bit of a fin on the top at the one on the right, and the very characteristic look of a tail, the fluke as the animal dives down looking for food. There's another shot of a fluke. And this is a telephoto, so we were not that close, believe me. Although I must say that it seemed like the whales knew where we were and they were not going to get too close to us. I don't think it was apprehension on their part. It was just, I don't know, you couldn't probably call it common courtesy, but nevertheless, they did avoid us. Flukes were very interesting when they came out of the water and then went down. You got a lot of water streaming off the back, as you can see here. Now on the ice flows serve as a nice whale feeding. That was activity that we were watching all this time. On the ice flows, there were lots of animals. This particular case, this is a leopard seal. We saw a lot of seals, and many of them looked like this. They were just snoozing away without a care in the world. That's okay for a leopard seal. Leopard seals are big. They can be, I don't know, 9-10 feet, something like that. And they're predators. They eat penguins. can be dangerous in the water. Up on an ice floe like this, it's obviously no threat to anybody. These are Weddell seals. They also like other seals, they like to zonk out on the ice floes. This is a crab eater seal. And then we saw birds taking advantage of the ice floes as well. This is a southern giant petrel. It was a pretty big bird, but it was just resting on the ice floe. Of course, we saw penguins. This is an emperor penguin. I'll tell you more about that in just a little bit. The seal is a crab eater seal. There are 17 or 18 species of penguins in the world. The number depends on whether you think the southern rockhopper is 2 species or 1. Some people think it's just 1 species worldwide. Other people think that the northern rockhopper and the southern rockhopper are different species. So you get 17 or 18 species. Now, of those, only 5 penguins breed in Antarctica. The rest are scattered around the world. This one, for example, is a blue penguin, sometimes called a little penguin because it is the smallest penguin. It's not even a foot long, and it's found in New Zealand. Since I happen to have a picture of it, I thought I'd throw it in here, even though this talk is concentrating on Antarctica. Another penguin that's found in New Zealand is the rockhopper. I'm sorry, where are we here? I'll get it. I'm blanking on the name. The Fiordland crested penguin, which is found on the western shores of New Zealand. Of the penguins that we saw, there were 3 that we could be expected to see. The Gentoo penguin shown here, the Adelie penguin shown here, and the chinstrap penguin shown here. What we could not expect to see was the emperor penguin. The gentleman who led the tour group on the cruise ship said he's taken 125 trips down to Antarctica over the years, and this was only the 4th time he had ever seen an emperor penguin in this part of Antarctica. They don't live there, and they don't usually stray there either, but this one was. So it was a kind of a bonus for us. And it was nice to see. I mean, it's a spectacular penguin. They're pretty big. They're 3 or 4 feet, something like that. So it's a good sized penguin. It was even posing for us. So sometimes it just stood there with its wings folded. Other times it said, "Oh, look, here I am. I'm an emperor penguin." Of course, we wanted to go ashore. We had a small ship, only about 75 passengers max, and that's good because there is a convention. I don't know if you're aware, Antarctica is not a country. You don't need a passport to go there. You need a passport to get to one of the jumping off points, but you don't need a passport to get onto Antarctica itself. It doesn't belong to any one country. Several countries have research stations there. And they are governed by the International Antarctic Treaty. And that sufficed for a while until in the 50s, the tourism trade began picking up, and the tour operators thought, well, we should probably regulate this so it doesn't get out of hand. So the International Association of Antarctic Tour Groups formed, and they set the regulations that tour groups follow. And one of the regulations is no more than 100 people on shore at any one time. So with only 75 on our ship, that meant every one of us got to go on every shore excursion that they wanted to go on. If we had a ship with 125 or 150 people or something like that, the shore excursions would have to be staggered. So you'd be able to go on some, but not on others. And that would have been a bit of a bummer. So we went from the ship onto these zodiacs, and then onto the islands. You can see our ship, the Magellan Explorer, in the background. The people in the yellow jackets are tour guides and tour guide helpers. They steer the boats, they bring people in, they help people get on and off the boats. Because there are no beaches here. It's all almost always rocky like this. So it's good to have a helping hand. Penguins. We saw lots of penguin colonies, like the penguins. You can see here. You can tell the Gentoo because they have that white sort of a cap across the top of the back of their head. So that's characteristic of them. They're very easy to identify. And penguin colonies had two characteristics that you might not have thought of first when you read about them. One is they were incredibly noisy. Here's one giving what I guess is the equivalent of a rebel yell or something like that. Anyway, it's calling out. And it's not the only one. Lots of penguins are calling out all at the same time. So you get to a penguin colony and you can always hear them from some distance away because they are so noisy. The other feature of penguin colonies that you can detect from some distance away is they are smelly. You see that reddish tint on the snow there? That's all penguin poop. So these penguins leave their feces where they will, and it stinks. And so when you go on an island or on the mainland that has these penguin colonies, be prepared to have your nose assaulted. Now, penguins can walk and swim. They can't fly, obviously. They're flightless birds. Those wings are used for swimming and for balance. So sometimes they just walk in single file like this. Sometimes you could describe it more as a waddle, as you see in this case. In addition to that, they hop. And it's remarkable. You wouldn't think that a penguin would be so agile. Here's a chin strap penguin. You can see how high in the air this bird is as it moves over this very rocky terrain. And they can slide on their stomachs. We didn't see them doing this too much, but they will do that. And who knows what the trigger is for them to do that rather than walking, but because most of the time they were in fact upright, but they will do this. Now, penguins are pretty tolerant of humans, as you can see here. They've never been hunted by humans, certainly in the recent past, and so they have nothing to fear from humans. They have very little in the way of natural predators. I'll talk about one in just a minute here. But they are tolerant of humans. They're, you can see here, photographer is trying to take their picture. This guy's got a telephoto lens. He does not need a telephoto lens to take a picture of that Gentoo penguin. The penguin was probably as curious about him as he was about the penguin. And penguins were tolerant of other animals. This is an Antarctic fur seal. The seal's paying attention to the penguin. The penguin seems to be oblivious to the seal. They don't bother each other. The fur seals do not eat the penguins, and so who cares if they're nearby? I talked about predators. This is an association that I did not expect to see. The penguin here is a Adelie penguin, and the other bird there is a skua, an Antarctic skua. Now, it turns out it's a kind of a gull. It's related to the gulls, but it's a pretty big bird. The penguin is maybe 1.5 feet, so you can see that by comparison how big the skua is. Skuas will predate on penguins, not an adult penguin. An adult, excuse me, an adult penguin's too big. It can fight off a skua, but it will take a penguin chick and it will take penguin eggs. And yet the skuas seem to be not to cause any particular problem for the penguins. It's sort of like lions in the Serengeti, I think. If the gazelles see the lion, then the lion has no chance to catch him. If the penguins see the skua, then it's not a problem because the skua is actually attacked from the air. So if it's on the ground like this, then it's not going to be a problem. Schools have their own interactions. Sometimes they get kind of noisy too. You can see a couple having a dispute here. There were other birds we saw. This is a kelp gull, which is related to a herring gull, as you can see by that the red spot on the bill. But it's pretty big. It's much bigger than a herring gull, and even in flight, it's pretty obvious from its size. Now, this was an interesting little bird that we saw on one of the islands. It's called a snowy sheathbill, and was quite friendly, if you will. It was so friendly, in fact, I was sitting down, Michael was sitting down, and he had a backpack at his feet, and it walked up and it was quite happily pecking at his backpack. I guess it wondered exactly what it was. But an interesting bird, no question. Now, penguins normally live in colonies. Sometimes you find them off by themselves, like the emperor penguin I saw. This Gentoo penguin was by itself, away from a colony. The king strap was away from the colony. Oops. There we go. And sometimes penguins just appeared with no other penguins in the vicinity, apparently. So this is one such example on Half Moon Island in the South Shetland Islands. So it was just standing there by itself. There's a lot of human influence in Antarctica. You wouldn't think so, but there is. This is an abandoned Argentinian research station. The penguins have just sort of taken over the area around there. They're not bothered by the buildings. The buildings are just left to deteriorate. There are other places like this abandoned whaling station. This is in on Whalers Island, Half Moon Bay. And the drums, the big oil drums there were for diesel fuel. But you can see there, this was a whaling station back in the early part of the 20th century, and the buildings, it was abandoned quite some time ago, 100 years now, more or less. So the buildings are collapsing. The terms of the Antarctic Treaty are that human habitations now, if they're built, they have to be disassembled and taken away when their use is over. But for old buildings like this, they're just allowed to disintegrate and fall apart on their own, which, as you can see, they do quite well in the Antarctic environment. There's an old whaler's boat in the background there. I didn't do that. I don't know why I did it by itself. An Antarctic fur seal in the foreground, penguins in the background. So there's always this collection of wildlife and sometimes the remains of human habitation. And finally, we get to the end of the journey, the Magellan Explorer, getting ready to set sail. And we had a nice sunset. We had a nice weather the last couple of days. And then we went back to the South Shetland Island where the airport was, flew back to Punta Arenas. I guess this sign is in case you're there and you don't remember where you are. It's kind of funny. But it's a nice sign right on the waterfront. You can see it, a cruise ship in the background. This was what got my attention. It says the Strait of Magellan, 500 years, 1520 to 2020. So Magellan the explorer discovered this strait between the Atlantic and the Pacific. So you don't have to go around the Cape Horn, or Cape Horn. Cape of Good Hope is in Africa, I think. So that was in 1520. So 1492, 1520. So that's 28 years after the discovery of the North and South American continents, that Magellan was here. And so they put up this medallion as a commemoration. It's amazing how quickly Europeans began to explore the world. Now, I have to say, Punta Arenas was not settled until the 19th century because the climate was so harsh that they couldn't really maintain a settlement there for many centuries. They did, however, have coal nearby. This is called the Laredo Dock, since abandoned, obviously. There was a railway line that went out there, and they took coal in coal cars and just put them right onto coal freighters for transport to other places in the world. This was a great place for birds as well. These are imperial cormorants, or imperial shag as they're called. It's the same bird, just a different term used for them in different parts of the world. There's an up close view of them. They were just ubiquitous on this abandoned dock. And with that, we left Punta Arenas and flew safely back home. And I thank you for your attention.
All right, thank you very much, Fred. Give me 1 second and I'll stop the recording, then we'll open up to questions.